What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 38, the final game week of the season. I'm going to run you through how the team is looking, thoughts on where to spend that final transfer, what's going to happen with Isak, should I sell Palmer, etc. And I'll quickly take you through how I did in Game Week 37, even though I wish I kind of didn't have to. Let's get into it. So let's start with Game Week 37, and it really wasn't great. I scored 42 points, but I also took a 4-point hit. So it was 38 points total. And that took me from 44k to 68k. So a really disappointing game week. And to be honest, with one game week to go, it was a bit of a deflating week because I'd got into the top 50k ahead of schedule. I wanted to stay there and hopefully push on a little bit. And now I've fallen back to nearly 70k. And the chances of getting top 50k are now really slim. It's probably not going to happen. And this will end up being probably my fourth worst season in 15 years of playing. Now, to be fair, 68k, if the season was to end now, being your fourth worst finish in 15 seasons, is not that bad. But you can't help but be disappointed when you were higher up the week before. So not a great week. Let me talk about my transfers before I go through the whole team. I took out Eze and Sarr, and I brought in Palmer and Enzo. I'll come on to the Chelsea players in a minute. If I could give myself some credit, I think selling Eze and Sarr was the right call with the information we had. Ultimately, I took the approach that there could be rotation 3 days after the FA Cup final, or at least minutes being reduced, especially if they won. And they won, and Sarr only played 62 minutes, and Eze only played 9. And if you told me before the game week started that Eze was only going to play 9 minutes, 100% I would have sold him. So although it's backfired because Palmer's blanked and Eze's come off the bench and scored a goal, I think it was the right call. And I think ultimately, over many seasons, if you continue making those calls correctly, it will hopefully gain you points. But it's not going to happen every week. And that's what happened this week. And obviously, before the deadline, we didn't know Isak was injured. So right now, it made much more sense to keep Eze and sell Isak for Watkins. But before the deadline, we didn't have that info. And I thought Isak was going to start, and Eze and Sarr might not. And Eze didn't. So I feel like I made the right call, but I got punished for it. In terms of bringing Palmer in, I'm still getting comments and messages about how stupid it was captaining Palmer. Ultimately, a lot of those comments are from people that captained Watkins, who I said, by the way, I thought was the best option last week, but he only scored 3 more points. I know with captaincy it's actually a bit more than that because I don't own Watkins, but ultimately Watkins got an assist and Palmer didn't. That's all there was in it. So it was a pretty close call in the end, and I wanted to go slightly differential. And I was convinced that the Palace minutes might not be there this week, especially if they won. And that's what ended up happening. So I feel like I sold the right player with the information. I just didn't buy the right player. Palmer, despite being a massive differential, just didn't pay off, didn't get me returns. And I had to fund it either by selling Sarr to someone less than 5 million, which is why Enzo came in, or by selling Munoz to Mykolenko. Now, in the end, Munoz got 1 point and Mykolenko got 8. So the correct hit was to sell Munoz. But again, I didn't feel like there'd be that much rotation in defence. And Munoz played 90 minutes. So again, if you tell me before the deadline that Munoz is going to play 90 minutes against Wolves at home, I'm never going to hit him out. I'm going to go for the midfield route instead. I think the maybe slight mistake I made, apart from just bringing in Palmer in general, which is what most people feel, is underestimating the team that Man United might put out. And the annoying thing is, I kind of knew they were going to go strong. You could just tell from what Amorim said in the press conference versus what Ange Postecoglou said. And so bringing in Enzo wasn't great, but my only other option was to sell Munoz. And I thought he would start, and he did. So as frustrating as it is and how bad the game week went, I don't feel like I should beat myself up that much about it. I think I made an okay call. I went for a super differential captain. Ollie Watkins was 116% effective ownership. Palmer was like 15. If that had paid off, it would have been huge. It wasn't. These things happened. So that's why I went that route. Elsewhere, the only player... Vissa got me a 10-pointer. Really happy about that because I was slightly frustrated I'd brought him in the week before. Even though I knew it was a good option, it was just the money situation. Rogers 6, Mbeumo 5, Martinez 6. 3 clean sheets in a row for Villa. Martinez has been great for me the last 3. Elsewhere, just rubbish. Saliba going off at half-time in a game where Arsenal kept a clean sheet. That's frustrating enough, but we're probably going to lose him for Southampton as well. Munoz obviously played 90, but got a 1-pointer. Vardy clean sheet wiped, although the Man City clean sheet being wiped was actually good for me. And anyone that's only got one Man City defender because their ownership is so high. I just wish it was Evan Nielsen that wiped the clean sheet. He did hit the post in that game, but ultimately Bournemouth just weren't very good. And I saw lots of comments last night that they were on the beach. I think they just played against a Man City team that performed really well. So a lack of points, only like 4 players that actually returned for me. And the Palmer captaincy is just not great. But I would probably make that call again. I think half of, or a lot of FPL is getting good players that you know are going to play. And ultimately, Eze didn't play until the last 10 minutes. And I know everyone will disagree. Obviously, I want points, right? I'd rather get lucky and do really well. But I do think over a span of time, making those calls is probably better. But anyway, I'm just waffling now. Rubbish game week. Fingers crossed 38 can be big. But it has to be big to get top 50k, and I'm not sure it will be. So going into the final week, it's just 1 free transfer and 0.3 million in the bank, so not a huge amount of flexibility. Goalkeeper-wise, I'm pretty set. I'm playing Raya against Southampton away, which obviously makes sense. Could there be some rotation for Arsenal? Possibly, but I don't see it in the goalkeeper position. And even if there was, I've got Martinez on the bench against Man United away, and Villa will definitely go full strength, because they're still trying to secure Champions League for next season. So goalkeepers, no issues. Back 3, Nico Williams against Chelsea at home. I don't think it's that bad if I have to play him. And I think if this was any other game week, I probably wouldn't worry about it too much. But I do think for this particular game, Forest have to win. Now, I don't think that means from the start they'll go all out. In fact, I think the opposite, right? They'll probably sit in, try and hit Chelsea on the break like they usually would. But at some point, they might have to go for it. So I do think the chances of a clean sheet are slightly more reduced this week. And Chelsea's not an easy fixture either. And Forest defensive numbers have been slipping the last few weeks. So I don't mind playing Nico Williams, but I don't think it's great. But he can be attacking as well, so you never know. So he's okay, but I'm not completely happy about it, if that makes sense. And I wasn't planning on playing him, but Saliba's gone and got injured. And with Saliba, by the way, I think I said this yesterday, it's a hamstring issue. I think there's pretty much zero chance that he's going to start against Southampton. If your whole game week 38 is reliant on Saliba starting, forget about it. Why risk him? It's a nothing game. Arsenal have second place basically wrapped up. Kivior and Calafiori can play if they're both fit. He ain't going to start. That's why Nico Williams is in the team for me. Munoz is my other option. I just don't see a clean sheet for Palace whatsoever. And it's going to be more difficult to get an attack and return at Anfield. Other 2 defenders, Livramento against Everton at home. I'm actually really happy to play him this week. I think Newcastle have got something to play for. And again, just on that, when I say things like teams are on the beach, teams have got something to play for, I don't necessarily think it means their performance levels go up like 50%, but it does mean they'll go full strength. They'll probably focus a bit more and stuff like that. And out of all the teams playing in the final week, Newcastle have got one of the best shots at a clean sheet, I would say. Everton at home, who have nothing to play for. They've had their leaving party for Goodison. I just think clean sheet looks pretty, not guaranteed, but quite likely for Newcastle. We know Livramento can get forward as well. Vardiol, his ownership is so high, the points don't really matter, but we know he's going to start because Man City will have to go full strength, whatever that means for them. But we know it definitely includes Vardiol from a defensive point of view. So there's just no need to use a transfer on him. So as it stands, I'm in the same position as the last few weeks. I don't really want to make a defender change. I think my back 3 looks okay. But I'm more likely to make a defender change now because of the Saliba injury. It's gone from no chance of making a defender transfer to a slight possibility. If I do make a move, it's going to be one of 3 players. And it'll be Saliba to probably Kirkes. But I do feel, if I just check defenders right now, I feel like he's probably going to be one of the most popular transfers in. Yeah, 54k. So if I want to go slightly different, I might back against that. Also worth saying that Bournemouth have nothing to play for now. Because they lost against Man City last night, in terms of European places, it's gone now. Now, they might just want to finish further up the table, which is absolutely fair enough. But European's gone now. So I might dodge Kirkes. If I do, it'll be for an Arsenal defender. And it'll probably be Ben White. Because I think he's almost certain to start because he hasn't had a huge amount of minutes this season and Timber is out. And he can be quite attacking. And hardly anyone owns him. People will obviously think about bringing him in this week, but his ownership won't be that high. Or, if we get confirmation Calafiori's starting, I quite like him from an attacking sense as well. So potentially, if I don't want to make an attacking change, I might do Saliba to Kirkes or one of the Arsenal players and just bench Nico Williams. But I think it's more likely as it stands that I move an attacker instead. So let's talk about that. So in midfield, let me start with the players that almost certainly are not going to get sold this week. One is Morgan Rogers against Man United away. As I've already said, Villa will go full strength. We know Rogers will play in that game, probably 90 minutes, and it's not a bad fixture. He's been fantastic value all season. I do have 0.3 million in the bank, so I could sell him to a Bournemouth midfielder, someone like Kluivert or Semenyo who've got Leicester at home, which would be an upgrade, but I just don't think I want to do that. Not for Rodgers anyway. And also with Kluivert, he got subbed at half-time last night. He was benched a couple of games ago as well. I'm a little bit less confident in his minutes going into 38 than I was. I like Semenyo too, but I just think Rodgers is going to end up staying. Same with Mbeumo. Wolves away is not a bad fixture whatsoever. There's probably going to be goals in that game. If there is, Mbeumo and Wissel will be at the heart of it. That's a pretty easy hold. And then Salah is currently my captain against Palace at home. That guy has started 37 out of 37 games this season. He's definitely going to start in game week 38. I think he needs one attacking return to match the record for goals and assists in a Premier League season, and obviously needs 2 to beat it. I would not put it past him to beat that record against Palace. I think Liverpool will go pretty full strength in this game. Like Van Dijk will come back in, for example. And I think there could be a big score. There's always a game on the final day that goes big, like 4 or 5 goals. It could be this one. So Salah is currently my captain with the players that I own. And by the way, because someone said this to me yesterday in a comment, I can't wait to hear more about how Salah is good because of the record he's trying to beat, even though he's been blanking, basically. That was what was being implied. Again, I don't think the record means that Salah will play 50% better, but I think it means he definitely starts. We know Salah is great. He'll probably play 90 minutes. And I do think it means a little bit in terms of his actual output. Like, I remember the thing that sticks out for me is Son a couple of seasons ago when he was chasing the Golden Boot and they were playing Norwich. The Spurs players just seem to want to pass to him even more. So I think Salah could be slightly more involved than normal because of that. Again, he's already amazing. Right? We're talking about maybe like a 0.5, 1% difference, but I do think it matters. But most importantly, I think it matters because of his minutes. And for some players, we're not going to be sure in 38. With Salah, we definitely are. So I actually think as it stands, he's probably the best captain for 38. It's just a bit boring because I think everyone is going to do that. The fourth midfielder is Palmer against Forest away. I think my plan I know my plan when I bought him was to sell to Saka. And so my decision as it stands is Saka to be brought in and play Nico Williams, or keep Palmer, who's a massive differential, and sell Saliba to one of those defenders I spoke about. So let's say it's Kirkes. It's Kirkes and Palmer, or Nico Williams and Saka. Now, I think most people would go the Nico Williams-Saka route, primarily not even because they love Saka, because they hate Palmer. And I think that's fair. And obviously, Southampton away is a better fixture. The only slight thing that's playing on my mind, Palmer is still a huge differential. And I know Palmer is the reason part of the reason I've just dropped rank. And you can kind of get into this cycle where, I need to go differential again to climb back up. But he is a massive differential, and he's definitely going to play the full game. I just don't see him getting subbed off. It's so important for Champions League next year. He's going to have to play 90. Does Saka need to play 90 against Southampton? Absolutely not. So there's probably a slight chance, like 2-3%, Saka's benched. And even if he starts, he's probably coming off early. Now it's Southampton. 60 minutes might be enough. But there is some reason to keep Palmer. Maybe not a great reason, but there is something there. So as it stands, that's my moves. I either do Saliba to Kirkes or White or Calafiori and bench Nico Williams, or I play Nico Williams and I do Palmer to Saka. The reason I think I'm more likely to do the Saka move is because weeks ago, I eyed him up as a differential captain for 38. And don't get me wrong, everyone's thought about this. I'm not saying it's some magic thing that only I've thought about. But what makes me more keen to do it is he's only got 77,000 transfers in. So even Ollie Watkins has more. Evan Nielsen has more this week. Visser has almost the same. Bowen has 100k. Saka's not being brought in as heavily as I thought he would be. And that's partly because he's blanked so much. So that's going to keep his ownership down. So I don't think it's going to be a case like with Watkins last week, where he gets close to like 1 million transfers in and everyone's captaining him. I think most people are going to go Salah. The problem is now, I've kind of talked myself into the fact that Salah's ahead of Saka for 38, and I don't know if I want to go different. But is that partly because I've just had a bad game week? Like, these things do play on your mind. I'm only human. So, I don't know. If the deadline was in an hour, I'm probably doing Palmer to Saka. But I've got a bad feeling that by Sunday, I'm going to talk myself into keeping Palmer for the minutes and making a defender transfer, even though I said I wasn't going to do that. But I also didn't expect Saliba to get injured. Anyway, Salah captain, great this week. I just went to edit the video and then I realised that people are going to ask me about Jarrod Bowen, why I've not mentioned him at all. He's definitely a great option for the final week because he'll almost certainly start. It's Ipswich away and he'll probably go and play 90 minutes as he always does. And if Paquetá's not on the pitch, then he's probably on penalties. There is a chance that if Fulkrug's on the pitch that he would take them instead. But either way, Bowen is just a good option. Instead of Saka, like if I really wanted to sell Palmer, I could go for Bowen. I just don't see me doing that. In that situation, I think I would just take the differential of Palmer and just hope that he can get me something. It's not to say that Bowen's a bad option because he's not. There's a reason he's the most transferred in player this week and probably will be all the way up to the deadline. I just think for my team, it doesn't make huge sense. Like if I was free hitting and I only had a choice between Palmer and Bowen, I probably would go Bowen. And so you could argue that's still a worthwhile use of a transfer, but I'd probably rather have Kirkes and Palmer than Nico Williams and Bowen, if that makes sense. So the reason that Saka is so far ahead of my thinking, his underlying numbers are better. He's definitely on penalties. And Southampton away is arguably a slightly better fixture as well than Ipswich away. So that's why I prefer him as a differential captain. I'm not as worried about not owning Bowen. So it's not that he's completely out of my thinking, even though I forgot to mention in the first time round of recording this. But I don't see me going for him on the final day. I don't see me doing like in Burmo to Bowen, for example. That just doesn't feel needed at all. And I think I'd rather keep Palmer as the differential than go to Bowen. For 1 week, I would just see what happens and hope it kind of swings my way this time. And then my 3 forwards up front, Evan Nielsen against Leicester at home, fairly straightforward. He's definitely staying. One of the best fixtures on the final day. I did mention earlier that the European chase for Bournemouth is now off, and so there might be some rotation. But I think ultimately, because it's a home game, it'll be mostly full strength. So I'm fairly confident Evan Nielsen will start. There's not enough reason to even think about selling him, to be honest. Visser against Wolves away, like in Burma, is just a good option. When I look at my team, he's just not one of the priority transfers out. And I don't actually think there's that many better forwards this week anyway. Like you could argue, especially from a differential point of view, that Haaland is better, absolutely, for the final day. But I've not got anywhere near that money. So no point even thinking about it. Evan Nielsen and Visser are basically locked this week. Isak is yellow flagged. We haven't had an update since the weekend. We're not going to get one until Friday. Maybe I'm going to be wrong about this, but I've got a confidence that Isak is going to start because it wasn't a minor problem. And ultimately, Newcastle can't mess about with their team this week. They've got to go and try and go as full strength as possible. And that absolutely includes Isak. The drop off to Wilson, etc., is just not great. So I think if Isak can play, he will. Now, obviously, if playing him is going to make the injury much worse, they're not going to do it. You don't want to make it worse, obviously. But I think he's going to play. And so I'm not too worried about him right now. If he was out for sure, then I would probably keep Nico Williams and Palmer and just deal with Isak instead. And the most obvious player to go for is Ollie Watkins. If we got a leak that someone like Havertz started for Arsenal, then I might consider him against Southampton as a massive differential. But there's not really many other forwards to even bother looking at. Like Cunha was obviously benched last night. For what it's worth, I think Cunha will probably start in 38. But there's no way I'm going to take that risk. If we knew that, Nunez was starting or something, I might take one last punt on him against Palace at home. But we're probably not going to get this info. So when I think about who to bring in, it will just be Isak to Watkins if Isak is definitely out. And will it absolutely hurt to have to bring Watkins in after not doing it last week and getting massively punished by the points? Yes, but I can't think about that stuff. I've just got to make the right move for my team. So I think Isak will probably start, but if he doesn't, I move to Watkins. Otherwise, it's Palmer to Saka or Saliba to one of those defenders I've mentioned a few times. I looked at my suggested transfer on Hub. Surprise, surprise, it's Palmer to Saka. Nobody wants Palmer, not even the model. So maybe I get rid of him and then maybe I captain Saka instead. But that's all there is to it. It's Saliba, Palmer or Isak being sold. And then it's Salah captain if I don't buy Saka. It's possibly Saka captain if I buy him. If that's useful, sorry, if that video has been useful, you've enjoyed it in any way, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'm probably going to say this a few times this week, but thank you very much for your support over yet another season. It does look like, even though the rank is not where I quite want it to be, it's probably enough to keep making videos for at least one more season. That's all I can ask for. So thank you for watching the videos all season, hitting that like button, hitting subscribe. By the way, I didn't put out a game week preview video today because, to be honest, most of the topics and questions that came in I've already covered in the transfer tips video. There wasn't enough content to do a whole nother video, and I don't want to waste your time. So what I'm going to do is team selection today, probably have a day off tomorrow, and then on Friday in final thoughts, I'll try and cover all those little questions, maybe even like a quick fire fashion or something like that. And then Sunday we'll have deadline stream. There probably won't be any content on Thursday or Saturday unless I think of something that, you know, is useful or could be in some ways entertaining or something like that. Hopefully it makes sense. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's my thoughts, etc. And I'll catch you probably on Friday now.